The knock came just as the morning sunlight spilled across the small living room floor, cutting through the quiet like a blade. Our eyes froze mid-step, his hand still wrapped around a chipped coffee mug, his daughter's laughter echoing faintly from the other room. There was something about that knock, firm, precise, almost intentional. Not the careless knock of a neighbor or delivery boy. This one carried weight. The kind that makes your chest tighten before your mind can even catch up. When he opened the door, the air itself seemed to shift. Standing there was a woman dressed in sharp elegance, her presence commanding in a way that made the modest doorway feel too small to contain her. Her expression was calm, almost unreadable, but her eyes held something deeper, something that unsettled him more than anger ever could. In her hand, she carried nothing but a thin leather folder, yet felt like she was holding the past itself. "I've come to collect a debt," she said quietly, her voice steady as steel. "You owe me 10 years. If you believe in kindness and second chances, and in the idea that even the smallest act can echo across years, take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Heartfelt Stories. Because stories like this remind us just how powerful a single moment can be." Our eyes didn't recognize her. Not at first. His life had been too full of survival. Too consumed by the daily grind of raising his daughter alone, working long shifts at the garage, and trying to keep the past from creeping into the fragile piece he had built. Faces blurred together over time, especially from the years he tried hardest to forget. But something in her eyes lingered. She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, not out of arrogance, but with the quiet certainty of someone who already belonged in the story unfolding. Her gaze swept across the room. The worn sofa, the neatly folded school uniform on the chair, the small drawings taped to the wall. She noticed everything. And somehow, it didn't feel like judgment. It felt like understanding. Ariai's daughter, Meher, peeked from the hallway, her curious eyes wide. The woman softened for just a fraction of a second when she saw her, and in that tiny shift, our eyes felt something crack open the tension between them. 10 years. The words echoed again, and then, like a distant storm finally reaching shore, the memory returned. It had been a rainy afternoon. Our eyes was younger then, worn down but still hopeful in a way he didn't realize he would lose. He had been walking home after a long day, his pockets nearly empty, his mind heavy with worries he didn't know how to solve. That was when he saw her, sitting on the curb, soaked, trembling, her world clearly shattered in ways that went beyond the rain. She had been alone. No phone, no help, no direction. Most people had walked past her. Our eyes had almost done the same. But something had stopped him. Maybe it was the way she stared at the ground like she didn't belong in the world anymore. Maybe it was a quiet instinct that sometimes overrides logic. He had offered her his jacket, then tea, then silence, the kind that doesn't demand explanations. He had spent hours sitting beside her in a small roadside cafe, not asking questions she wasn't ready to answer. When she finally spoke, her words had come out broken and uneven, like pieces of glass being forced back together. She had lost everything that day. Family, trust, direction, and our eyes, a stranger with nothing to offer but presence, had stayed. He had given her the last of his savings for a bus ticket. She insisted she would repay someday. He had written his number on a scrap of paper she never used. And then, just like that, they had parted ways. He never thought he would see her again, back in the present. Our eyes felt the weight of that memory settle into place. "You," he whispered, the recognition finally taking hold. Her name came to him slowly. Zarmina Qureshi. Except now, the name carried a different gravity. Because over the years, that same name had begun appearing everywhere. Business headlines, interviews, success stories. She had become one of the most powerful CEOs in the region, a woman known for her sharp mind and unshakable determination. And now she was standing in his living room. Zarmina turned to face him fully, her expression no longer distant. It was softer now, but not weak. Controlled, but deeply human. "You saved me," her eyes seemed to say, even before her words caught up. The room felt smaller as the truth settled in. Our eyes, who had struggled to pay rent some months, who had patched together a life from whatever he could manage, had unknowingly changed the course of someone who had gone on to build an empire. But debts like this, they don't return in simple ways. Because what she wanted wasn't money. It was time. 10 years. The next few hours passed like a slow unraveling of everything ROIs thought he understood about his life. Zarmina explained, not in long speeches, but in quiet clarity, how that one day had become the turning point she had built everything upon. She had carried his kindness with her, not as a memory, but as a foundation. And now, she had come back to repay it, not with charity, but with opportunity. She offered him a position in her company, not out of pity, but because she believed in something he had forgotten about himself. His resilience, his honesty, his ability to show up when it mattered most. But accepting it wasn't simple, because R.I.'s life wasn't just his own anymore. It was Meher's. The days that followed were filled with quiet conflict. R.I.'s found himself standing between two worlds, the one he'd built with effort and sacrifice, and the one that suddenly opened before him, filled with possibilities he had never dared to imagine. Could he leave behind the life he knew? Could he step into a role he didn't feel ready for? And most importantly, could he believe that he deserved it? Zarmina didn't pressure him. She waited, not as a CEO expecting an answer, but as someone who understood that the biggest battles aren't fought in boardrooms. They're fought within. One afternoon, as sunlight poured through the window just like it had on the day she arrived, our eyes watched his daughter drawing quietly at the table. She looked up at him and smiled, a simple, pure expression that carried no doubt, no fear, just trust. And in that moment, something shifted, because 10 years ago, he had chosen kindness without knowing where it would lead. Now he had to choose courage. He accepted, not for the money, not for the status, but for the chance to build something better. For himself, for Meher, and for the belief that even the smallest acts of goodness are never truly lost. The transition wasn't easy. R.I. struggled, stumbled, questioned himself more times than he could count. The corporate world was nothing like the life he had known. But Zarmina stood by her decision, guiding without overshadowing, reminding him in subtle ways that growth is never comfortable. Slowly, he found his footing. And with each step forward, the weight of the past began to feel less like a burden and more like a story of survival. Years later, the same man who once fixed engines in a small garage stood in a place he never imagined. Not because luck had found him, but because kindness had circled back in the most unexpected way. Zarmina never asked for repayment again, because she already had it, not in years, but in the way ROI's lived his life. Choosing empathy, choosing strength, choosing to believe that even when everything feels small and insignificant, it can still matter more than we ever realize. If this story touched your heart, if it made you pause and think about the people who've crossed your path and the kindness you've given or received, take a moment to like, comment, and share this video. Your support helps keep stories like this alive. And before this story comes to a close, here's a special request. Comment below and share a moment when someone's kindness changed your life, even in the smallest way. Because sometimes, the debts that matter most aren't measured in money or time. They're measured in the lives we change without even knowing it.